Here we go. We will be recording this webinar, and we'll have this presentation up for you to look at and refer back to if you need it later. But yeah, so these are the Humanities Kansas CARES Act relief grants supporting Kansas cultural organizations that do work in the humanities to help support them during this time of difficulty due to coronavirus. Eligibility. Okay, so to be an eligible organization for these grants, you do need to be a Kansas nonprofit whose primary work is in the humanities. You need to have a DUNS number. We have some helpful links on our website. If you don't have a DUNS number, you can get them. It's very easy. It's a very simple process. It can take a little bit of time though, so you want to make sure that you get that started as soon as you can, so that you can, if you don't have one already. The kinds of organizations that can apply, but of course this is not all of them, but include things like museums, libraries, historical societies, academic organizations, historical sites. Many of you, I'm sure, are here today from these organizations, so thank you for being here. And that's basically what it takes to be eligible. Please do, if you have more specific questions about your eligibility, feel free to put them into the chat box and we'll address them. Request amount. So these grants go up to $20,000, but the level that you can request is based on your operating budget. So if you have an annual budget of less than $100,000, you can request up to $10,000. And I see some questions coming in. We'll make sure we get to those questions shortly. But yes, if you have a budget of less than 100,000, you can request up to 10,000. That does not mean you need to request 10,000. So please request what you need to cover 2 months of, we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but of salary, rent, utilities, consultant fees. But if you have an annual budget of between 100 and 500,000, you can request up to $15,000. And if you have a budget of more than 500,000, you can request up to 20,000. Costshare is encouraged, it is not required, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the presentation. But I know there have been some questions about Costshare. We do have a helpful Costshare information document on the website that you can find, and I'm happy to share the link to that with all of you. But we'll talk about it in a little more depth. It's really not too hard, so don't be intimidated by that. And again, of course, it's not required, but we do really encourage you to list your Costshare. Allowable costs. So you can request funds for any of the following: salary support, that's for full or part-time salaries, as long as these are positions that are critical to your organization's cultural or humanities mission, for up to 2 months. And the final report, which we'll talk a little bit about shortly, again, is due September 14th. So these need to be costs that you can accrue before September 14th. That's been a common question I've been receiving in email. So these funds can also be used to cover benefits for your full and part-time staff, and they do need to be used, again, very soon before September 14th. You can also request funds to cover fees for contractual or consultant personnel who are key to the advancement of your organization's mission. And then you can also request funds to cover costs including rent and utilities. You cannot request costs for a mortgage. You also cannot request costs for, we've had some people asking if they can request funds for things that they need to reopen their spaces, like medical masks or gloves. Unfortunately, no, you can't request funds for those. It really has to be for one or several of these 3 things. Review criteria. So all of your grants, when they come in, they'll be reviewed, and I'll share the schedule for the review process with you in a bit. But the things that we're really looking for to prioritize who's getting funded are the following. So does your mission, is it actually 50% or more humanities based? That's important. There are grants that are being offered, CARES funds that are being offered through the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission. So if you have a more arts-based mission, you might consider going there, and Julie knows a little bit more about that and can maybe speak to that in the question and answer. We also need to know that you do have significant financial need due to the COVID-19 crisis. You do need to explain that to us and why this is so important that you receive these funds at this time. We need a detailed and reasonable budget request. The online application form, which is going to open up on May 13th, does have a pretty specific budget form that you sort of fill in, and it kind of walks you through. So it's pretty easy to see the level of detail that we're looking for in terms of your request. But please feel free to ask questions if you have them. Then we will need, we'll be looking to see if you are serving rural and or other underserved audiences. So we do want to make sure that we're getting these funds out to organizations that are serving audiences that aren't always served in the cultural sector. So if you have rural audiences, minority audiences, please make sure that you're applying. We really want to make sure these funds get out to those groups. And then we also want to make sure that you are demonstrating your ability to make a very valuable impact on your community right now, whether that's a social, cultural, or economic impact. Any of those are valid, but it's important that you do detail that for us and help us understand, you know, the major impact that you are making as an organization on your community at this time. Okay, so the application. So yes, the application isn't open yet. I've gotten a lot of questions. It's not there yet, but soon. It will be opening up on May 13th. And again, it's very structured. So it really walks you through exactly what you have to do. But the questions that you'll see when you get there include a question about your audience or visitor size for the year. And that can just be an estimate, but we need to know basically how many people you're serving every year. We need a description of your organization. This is probably something that you've used when you've applied for grants before. This includes your mission, a little bit of information about the types of audiences you're serving, as well as some descriptions of your core humanities programs. We need to know the annual operating budget, just the amount of your annual operating budget. We need to know how much you're requesting. So again, while there are those caps, based on the size of your budget, you can request below those caps, and we really do ask you to request just what you need, but you will have to explain what you're going to use the funds for. So that can be specific job titles, specific salaries, specific consultant fees, rent costs for a 2-month period, again, before September 14th. Then we will ask you to provide a brief description of the impact of the coronavirus on your organization, and why you need financial assistance. We'll also ask you to tell us a little bit about other funds that you're pursuing right now or have already pursued. And that's because we can't have federal funds that are covering the same things. You can't request federal funds for the same specific request. So if you are asking for your director's salary, you're asking us to cover it. If you've already applied through the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission for them to cover part of that salary, we cannot fund that as well. But you can apply for something different. So if you have a specific program director that does your humanities programming, and maybe you've applied to the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission to fund part of your executive director salary, but you would like to request for us to pay for part of your program director salary, that might be something that we could do. So you can apply to various federal sources at this time, but they have to be for different specific requests, if that makes sense. And then you will have to upload 2 attachments. One is just an image that we use for promotional purposes that represents your organization, so we can do a little announcement on Facebook or Twitter and sort of promote you and promote your use of these funds. But then another is a PDF of your organizational budget. So pretty clear. Again, the portal will open up May 13th. You can find it at humanitieskansas.org. And this is a rolling application, so you don't have to get it in right on May 13th. You have until June 12th. So anytime between May 13th and June 12th, you are welcome to submit your application online. And these are the dates by which we will get back to you. And I think we haven't put these up on the website yet, but I'd like to get them up there because I think it's helpful for people to see when they'll hear back. But if you have submitted by Friday, May 22nd, you should hear back by Friday, June 5th, if not before. If you submitted by Friday, May 29th, you should hear back by Friday, June 12th, if not before. Friday, June 5th, you'll hear back by June 19th. And if you submit the very last day you can submit, June 12th, you'll hear back no later than Friday, June 26th. So we will be reviewing the grants in these 4 cycles and getting back to you just as soon as we can. The reporting process. So yes, you do have to submit a final report for these grants. It is due September 14th. You can just email it to me. It's a really simple, just Word doc with some questions and then an Excel budget form. The Word doc asks for your organization name, the amount of funding that you were awarded, how you used your funds that you were awarded, How did the grant funds help you, particularly during this time of the coronavirus pandemic, to continue your excellent humanities programming that we know you all do? And then also, what do you see in the future? Maybe give us a little forecast of what's on the horizon for you, looking ahead to the rest of this year and early 2021, so we can sort of know about that and think about that and report that back to the NEH, so we know what kinds of funding continue to be needed. Again, there will have a budget report form, and it does have a space for you to, it'll have a space for the budget, what you thought you were going to spend, and then your actuals. So what you actually spend, that's what you'll be reporting on, as well as your cost share, if you are willing to do cost share, and we really hope you will. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Cost share, again, it's not required, but we do encourage it, because when we see what a wonderful investment we have here when the NEH gives money to the state of Kansas and pays for humanities programming, that it's generating additional dollars from the community. It's very helpful for us to be able to make the case that we are an excellent investment for the National Endowment for the Humanities. So we want to make sure we can prove that point as much as possible. So if you can help us out and take a little bit of extra time to do that cost share, it's super helpful. Just to say a few more words about cost share now. Cost share can be cash. It can be, so if you are receiving a grant for, let's say, your executive director salary from Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission, and then you're asking for program director salary from Humanities Kansas, that can be some sort of match. You can see that as a match. We don't usually allow federal matching, but in this case, we're going to allow it. It can also be in-kind services. So if you have volunteers, or you have people that are pitching in to help your organization for free, or you're getting free in-kind donations from other organizations at this time, you can list that as cost share. Your own organizational cash, you can list as cost share. So there are many, many ways to make your cost share and to convey that to us. All right, so we've a lot of frequently asked questions. We started a list here of them. So hopefully this will cover some of the questions. I think it covers at least one that's come in. Patrick, I just saw your question. We are recording this presentation, so we will get it to you. But so to just go through these quickly, if you have an Open Humanities Kansas grant from something else, a program that you're running, can you still apply for these? Yes, you can. Yes, you can still apply. Please do. Your organization has received a PPP loan to cover payroll. Can you still apply? Yes, you can. Diana, this I believe was your question. Yes, please still apply. My organization is applying for a CARES grant directly from the NEH. So this is something you can do. You can go on the National Endowment for the Humanities website and look at the opportunities. Can you still apply to funds from Humanities Kansas? Yes, you can, but again, don't apply for the same thing. So again, different salaries, rent from us, utilities from them, something like that, right? But it can't be the same thing, but yes, you can apply. How long will it take to go through the application process? I mean, I basically just walked you through it. It's not too hard. It really shouldn't take more than 20 minutes if you have everything together. So if you have your organizational budget PDF and your image, those are the only two things you have to upload. And the rest of it is just pretty simple. Of course, as a grant writer myself, I always like to write things out in a Word doc and then cut and paste, move it over into the online form, just in case there's a little glitch with the online form or something like that, you still have it saved. And that can also really speed up the process of writing your grant out. But yeah, pretty simple, shouldn't be too hard. Do we have to pay the funds back? No. Yay, no, you get to keep them. It's a grant, so as long as you use them as you said you would, you are good. You're doing a great job, and we are very honored to be able to support you during this time. I work for an arts organization. Can I apply? You can apply, as we've discussed. You might be a better fit for the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission's grants. But if you can make the case that your organization does a large amount of humanities programming, at least 50%, then you are eligible to apply. And you can also apply to the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission and Humanities Kansas, again, as long as you're requesting different things. More frequently asked questions. Cost share. So we just sort of went over this a little bit, but again, this isn't required, but it is very helpful to Humanities Kansas in terms of our ability to make the case for why we need continued funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities. So if you can take the time to just fill that in for us, that would be very, very helpful. And again, that can be matched cash from your organization, cash from another grant. or it can be donations from parties, in-kind donations, so gifts of things besides cash, like supplies or volunteer hours. There's a lot of way to meet your cost share, and there is a document that we have created that's on the website, and again, we can email that out to you if it's helpful to help you find it, that kind of walks you through very in a step-by-step way about the cost share. What do we mean by the humanities? That's a question that I get a lot. So the humanities we are thinking about academic disciplines, things like languages, literature, philosophy, history, ethnic studies, archaeology. We're listing them here. But of course, we're thinking largely about public humanities when we do Humanities Kansas. Humanities Kansas is designed to not only support academic thought, but to really get academic ideas out into the world. And so it's a little bit broader than just pure history research. If you're bringing the community together and engaging them with humanities topics, I think that's a good way to think about it. Really, it's anything that really helps people think about their stories, their histories, their communities in a way that draws on those academic disciplines. I think one of the things that's most confusing for folks is sometimes the arts side of this. So we cannot fund performing arts or visual art creation. We cannot fund visual or performing arts education to teach people how to make performance or a visual art. But we can fund the study of performance and of visual art. So if you're looking at a performance and thinking about the historical context of it, or if you're looking at doing something with a museum where you're teaching people about the history of a body of work, those are things that we can fund. But it's a little tricky because we can't fund art production, but we can fund the study of various kinds of art forms. I'm not sure I should apply. Any advice? We say apply. If you fit the eligibility requirements, if you're a Kansas nonprofit who does do work that's about 50% at least in the humanities, and you do have need, we do suggest that you apply. We're happy to take questions. You can always email me if you want to ask specifically about you, but generally we are suggesting that you go ahead and apply. Of course, these are competitive. Not everyone will be funded, but you definitely won't be funded if you don't apply. So might as well go ahead and give it a shot. Then we've had some questions about programming grants. So we do, these grants aren't for programs. These are, again, for the fairly select expenses that we've outlined here, for salaries, for benefits, for consultant fees, for rent and utilities. That's really what they're for. They're for basic operating support. They're not for you to create a new program. That said, we know lots of people want to create new programs right now. They're thinking about how to redesign the work that they do every day for this new environment. And so we do have some opportunities. I know many of you have applied for quick grants, so good to see some of you on here. Those go up to $1,000, and we have extended the deadline on those until August 1st. So you can apply anytime. You don't have to wait until August 1st. Anytime up until August 1st, you can apply for those. And those are grants of $500 or $1,000 that are designed to help you create new programs that engage people during the COVID crisis in ways that other than in person, right? So since we can't bring people together in spaces to see lectures or do some of the activities we might have had them do in the past, these are largely for things that people are doing online. So if you want to have a moderated Facebook book club online, or if you want to stream a presentation or a webinar, that kind of thing is what we're really funding through these grants. We also have our normal grants that we always do all year round. We have our mini Humanities for All grants that go up to $3,500, and that's a rolling deadline. You can apply for those at any time. And then we have our major Humanities for All grants that go up to $10,000. We have several cycles of those a year, but the one that's coming up soon is May 28th. And that is a hard deadline, so you want to get that in unless you want to wait for the next cycle. But we do think there will be some updates on these. We're maybe trying to think about some different ways to change these programs a little bit to make them even more effective during the COVID moment. So do keep an eye out for any updates that come out about those. I think the best way to really keep an eye out for updates from us is through Facebook. And I do have our Facebook web address at the end of this presentation. Of course, you can also go to the website, humanitieskansas.org, but we are posting a lot of the updates on Facebook pretty regularly. We also have cultural preservation grants to help you preserve pieces of culture in your community, historical documents, images, photographs, objects. Again, those go up to $3,500, and they have a cycle, they're due May 28th, but there may be some updates to these as well. So keep an eye out and just keep thinking about those. But these are really your options if you want to do a request for some kind of program funding. All right, well, and that's the presentation. So now we are very happy to take questions through the chat box. So send them in and I'll try to read them out as they come through, and we'll address them, and maybe Julie can help address some of them as well. Yes. So I have a question from Addison about an academic library. Could they wait until after June 17th to begin the grant period in order to avoid overlap with another CARES grant they've received through their university? Yes, as long as you're using the funds before September 14th, I think that's fine. Just make sure that you do have to expend it all before you submit that final report. Another question from Portia. Yes, so this is the question, yes, that I know is a little bit confusing in the guidelines. So yes, you can ask me about the program, the funds for programming, and it's basically, if you email me, I'll tell you what I just told you, which is we have the quick grants, we have the mini grants, we have the major grants, the Humanities for All variety, and we have the cultural preservation grants. So those are the opportunities we have for that right now. If something changes, we'll definitely let you know. If we come up with some more program funding, we'll keep you posted. But right now, those are really the 4 different opportunities that we have. Again, those quick grants that go up to $1,000 for really online programming, the mini grants that are $3,500 rolling, the major grants up to $10,000 due May 28th, and the cultural preservation grants. Okay, is it also open to 501c6? I think, yes, this is open to 501c6. Is that right, Julie? Are we allowing?
It depends, if you're talking about like a chamber of commerce applying, that sort of thing, it's probably less competitive. It just depends on, are you doing 50% humanities programming, right? So it's not that you're necessarily ineligible, but are you able to meet the other guidelines as well? That's how I would answer that. We're not asking for submission of a 501c3 determination letter. So we're using nonprofit, we're using 501c3 kind of interchangeably and very broadly. So that's why libraries can fall under this umbrella. It is possible chambers or eco-devo places could fall under. Again, we're looking at it holistically in terms of, are you meeting all of those requirements? Are you in need, right? And so the priority for these funds, because they are limited, are for you to demonstrate that you are an organization that's in distress right now, or that it's coming, right? So obviously we want to help out those who are in immediate need now, rather than, somebody who thinks they might be in need 12 months from now. So that's why the grant funds have to be expended very quickly. You're not meant to put these in your savings account. You're not meant to do any of that, you're going to get these funds, you're going to use it to get your organization up and running again, and you'll send us a report. My only advice, I want to circle back to the questions about the PPP loans and all of that. You're going to want to be really, really careful about keeping your money separate. I always call it in your separate pots of money, so that if you do get a CARES Act relief fund from Humanities Kansas, it needs to be kept separate, however you want to interpret that, from the funds that you're going to get from the PPP loan, from the funds that you might be getting from the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission. They have to be for separate things, and the accounting has to be kept separate. So if you have an auditor that you work with every year for your annual audit, this is a good time to tap into that person's expertise and make sure that you're setting up everything correctly.
Thanks, Julie. That's really helpful. So I think that addressed a couple of the questions that just came in. For quick grants, yes, you can apply. We had a question about whether or not you could use quick grants for staff time and equipment. Yes, you can, but I think the important thing to remember with quick grants is you're asking us to support a project, so you need to pitch a project. And the part of the cost of doing that project may be a Zoom membership or some staff time, but what you're pitching is a project, not the staff time itself, right? You have to explain your humanities project to us. If we're looking at using these funds for salaries, what period of salaries could be covered? May 13th through September 14th. So we're looking at 2 months. This should be for about 2 months of salary. And so it's looking like probably by the time you are hearing from your grants, it's going to be probably June, July, or July, August that you're mostly going to be covering here. If you want to go a little into September, before September 14th, I guess that's fine. But I think mostly the months you're thinking about when you think about the 2 months are either June, July, or July, August. If an organization needs a DUNS number, yes, we do have resources explaining how to get a DUNS number. They're on our website, and I'm also happy to email them out to this group afterward. But it's, again, very simple. It doesn't cost any money, very easy process. Other questions? I think I hit all of the questions that have been typed in here. Well, that was easy. You guys are very on it. You know what you're doing. Right. Thank you. Diana says it seems straightforward. Well, we try.
Right, yeah.
What we aim for.
Yeah. The application, what you saw on the PowerPoint, those are the questions that are on the application. So there's nothing else that's going to be added. So if you can answer those or prepare your materials, just go ahead and do so and you'll be ready to roll. I know that other people have asked me in other situations about, is it better to apply the first week rather than the last week? And I would say our plan is to divide the full amount of money that we have available by 4 so that we can evenly disperse it throughout the time period, because we think that there will be people who are ready to go by May 13th, and that there will also be organizations that need a little bit more time to get organized before then. So we want to be able to have the opportunity to allow people to do that at their own level. And again, we want you to apply. We are just really delighted that the members of Congress included the National Endowment for the Humanities and the State Humanities Councils in the Relief Act funds. And you should all feel really good about that, because what that says to me and should say to you is that they value the work that you're doing in your communities and in your organizations. No one else is doing what you're doing. And so it's really important that we get you back up and running as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. So use these funds in that way. And if you don't need the operational grants, talk to Sarah, email me, and we'll talk about how a quick grant might be the best fit, or some of our other programming grants are a better fit than the operational grants. But I just really appreciate your interest and all that you do. And so glad that I have you as colleagues around the state. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Julie. Yes, well, and I just thank all of you for coming to see this webinar, and I look forward to continuing to communicate with you about these grants over the coming weeks. I always enjoy hearing from you guys, and hopefully we'll make a lot of progress and help people out in this challenging time. Thanks. Well,
thank you, Sarah.
Shut it down, but I will email with a few follow-ups, and we'll get this webinar up onto the website so you can all see it if you need to refer back. Thanks, guys.